What starts as a brutal murder soon pulls one man into a secret war far bigger than anyone could imagine. A government operation is unfolding in the shadows, cartels are being hunted, alliances are breaking, and the one man caught in the middle is about to realize he's been lied to from the very top. This is clear and present danger, and everything is about to spiral out of control. Clear and present danger opens with the U.S. Coast Guard spotting a suspicious vessel drifting through the Caribbean Sea and moving in to inspect it. But the moment they board, they are met with a horrifying scene. The ship has already been taken. Businessman Peter Hardin and his entire family have been viciously murdered, and the killers have stolen the vessel. At the CIA, Deputy Director James Greer assigns Jack Ryan to investigate Hardin's death, warning him to keep everything discreet. Not long after, Ryan briefs President Edward Bennett and his senior officials, laying out exactly what happened. He reveals that the Hardin family was massacred and that the Coast Guard arrested the two men found aboard the ship. When Bennett asks who they are, Ryan explains that both men are repeat drug traffickers with known ties to the Cali cartel. The news hits hard. Hardin was a close personal friend of the president. Once the room clears, Bennett calls in his national security advisor James Cutter and makes his position clear. He wants decisive action against the cartels. Having promised his voters he would solve the drug crisis, Bennett now sees it as a clear and present danger to the national security of the United States. Meanwhile, in Colombia, Felix Cortez confronts Cali cartel leader Escobedo over the severity of what he has done. Escobedo brushes it off, coldly claiming he only killed a thief. But Cortez quickly reminds him that the man he murdered was a friend of the U.S. president. That finally shakes Escobedo, even though he tries not to show it. Cortez warns him that if he keeps making reckless decisions and refuses to listen, he will walk away from his role as intelligence officer. And once that happens, Escobedo will not survive for long. Elsewhere, Ryan is with his family when devastating news reaches him. James Greer has cancer. Ryan rushes to see him and immediately asks if it can be operated on. Greer gives him the grim truth. At this stage, there are no guarantees. Knowing he may soon be absent, Greer tells Ryan he wants him to step into his position so he can remain informed on everything happening. Ryan reluctantly agrees, but before he leaves, Greer gives him one final warning. Watch your back. As Ryan takes on the new role, he is tasked with preparing a briefing for Congress on the Colombian aid program, centered around a $75 million funding request. At the same time, Deputy Director of Operations Robert Ritter privately speaks with Cutter. He points out that Ryan is the type of man who follows every rule. Because of that, Cutter decides Ryan must be kept completely out of the loop. Ritter then asks for presidential authorization for their covert operation in Colombia. But Cutter reveals something far more dangerous. President Bennett knows nothing about it. Instead, Cutter takes full responsibility himself and signs the written orders for Operation Reciprocity. Ritter travels to Panama City, where he meets CIA operative John Clark to initiate the operation. Clark is fully aware of the dangers involved and only agrees to take on the mission once he receives the money. He also demands access to satellite communications and a team of trained soldiers, which Ritter accepts. On the other side, Cortez arrives in America to meet his girlfriend Moira, who works as the secretary to FBI Director Emil Jacobs. But after spotting her friends there, he suddenly grows nervous and leaves. Elsewhere, Ryan continues digging into the Hardin family murders and becomes increasingly suspicious that it was not a pirate attack, especially after learning the two captured men had plane tickets to Bogota booked for the very next day. Ryan's co-worker, PT, then manages to break into Hardin's business computer, uncovering the full details of his financial dealings. Afterwards, Ryan presents what he has found. 3 years earlier, Hardin had received a massive foreign investment, which he funneled into 20 major shopping centers across the United States. Yet, despite operating during a recession, he reported record profits to the IRS. The truth, however, is far darker. Hardin had been secretly hiding the real figures from his business partners and stole $650 million from them, which ultimately led to his death. When Bennett struggles to understand, Ryan explains that Hardin had been laundering money for the Cali cartel. The revelation shocks Bennett. He had known Hardin for more than 40 years. Now his biggest concern is how to face the press. His advisors suggest downplaying the friendship, but Ryan insists he should openly acknowledge it, leaving the media with nothing left to expose. Meanwhile, Clark visits the sniper school in California, where he recruits a highly skilled sniper named Chavez for the covert operation in Colombia. Later that night at home, Ryan watches the news as Bennett is asked whether he was friends with Hardin. Ryan is pleased to see the president follow his advice, openly admitting to their lifelong friendship. Soon after, Ryan stands before the congressional committee to request the $75 million funding for Colombia's fight against the drug cartel. But Senator Mayo questions whether the additional funding will make any real difference. She demands assurance that no military operation will be carried out there, and only releases the funds after receiving Ryan's personal guarantee. That night, Clark flies his men into Colombia. Before they jump into Escobedo's territory, he gives one final order: remove the dog tags. Empty your pockets. If the mission goes wrong, no one can be identified. The following day, Ryan meets with Bennett, who instructs him to seize the money held in Hardin's offshore accounts, believing it could be highly beneficial for them. Ryan urges him to wait, reminding him that it is still only a theory. Without concrete evidence linking Hardin to the cartel, they cannot legally seize the assets. Bennett then gives him a direct order: find the proof. Ryan later visits Greer in hospital, who finds it almost amusing that Ryan has already walked into a trap within just 2 weeks of taking the new position. He advises Ryan to reach out to his old friend Clark, who may be able to help on the ground in Colombia. But before Ryan leaves, Greer gives him another warning: keep a close eye on Ritter. Meanwhile, in Colombia, the special ops team destroys one of the cartel's aircraft before the drugs can be smuggled out.
The chicken is in the pot, over.
In Bogotá, Ryan meets DEA agent Jean Fowler, who escorts him through the city in a convoy of armored vehicles because of the dangerous security situation. She shows him photographs of the cartel leaders, but one image is blurred. She admits they still have neither a clear picture nor a confirmed identity for Escobedo's intelligence officer. At the same time, Escobedo receives news that another aircraft has been destroyed and immediately suspects someone is feeding information to the DEA. Cortez assures him that is not the case, insisting he would be the first to know. Instead, he suggests that a rival group may be targeting their operation. Escobedo orders him to find out who is responsible. Ryan then meets Clark and explains that he needs proof of Hardin's connection to the cartel. Clark questions why he came to him for that. Ryan reveals that Greer sent him. After asking about his old friend's health, Clark quietly points Ryan toward the Lindo coffee factory. Ryan soon uncovers the truth. Hardin had been buying extremely expensive coffee from Escobedo's coffee company. The discovery impresses Bennett, but Ryan also brings bad news. The Colombian government will likely have a strong interest in recovering those funds. Bennett decides to send Jacobs to handle the negotiations, relying on his long-standing connection with their attorney general. Meanwhile, Clark's men move deeper into Escobedo's territory and stealthily plant explosives at a drug manufacturing facility. But they are spotted. A fierce shootout erupts, forcing them to retreat before detonating the bombs. Soon after, Escobedo arrives at the site, furious over the constant setbacks. As he surveys the damage, Cortez quietly picks up a bullet casing from the ground. Back at the FBI office, Jacobs prepares to leave and urges Moira to take a few days off, noticing how hard she has been working. The moment he is gone, she quickly calls Cortez and tells him that her boss will be out of the country. She then invites him over so they can spend time together. Later, Bennett holds a press conference, announcing the results of the money laundering investigation and the plan to seize $650 million along with the associated estate. Elsewhere, Cortez begins planning his retaliation, leaving his men to carry it out while he flies to America to see Moira. He arrives at her home where she is waiting for him. But as the two become intimate, he suddenly snaps her neck, eliminating the final loose end. In Colombia, Ryan and the others welcome the U.S. envoy, but on the way, one of the mercenaries infiltrates their security detail by quietly eliminating the rear guard. Ryan suddenly spots armed men positioned on the rooftops, but by then it is already too late. A bus cuts off their path and mercenaries above open fire with rockets. As they try to reverse, a second bus blocks the other end, trapping them in place. Another rocket slams into one of the cars, killing the driver instantly. While the armored vehicle shields the others, Ryan grabs the wheel and tries to steer them to safety, but another rocket destroys the second car, forcing the survivors to abandon the vehicles. Ryan checks on Jacobs, but he is already dead. With no other choice, he follows the others and takes cover in the corner. They notice one of the vehicles is still running, so they use the smoke as cover and make a desperate rush for it. But only Ryan survives the brutal ambush. Everyone else is killed.
My God!
Elsewhere, a woman discovers Moira's body and immediately alerts the police. At the same time, Ryan calls Kathy to tell her that he is alive and on his way home. bringing her some relief. Bennett is furious over Jacob's death. To him, the attack on American officials is a direct challenge to the sovereign power of the United States. He orders Cutter to escalate the response against the cartel. At a family gathering, Escobedo admits to Cortez that despite wanting to take such action himself, he had nothing to do with the attack on the Americans. He asks for Cortez's assessment. Cortez suggests that a rival cartel may be trying to shift the blame onto Escobedo. Escobedo immediately contacts his rival and demands to know whether he ordered the hit. The rival denies it and instead turns the blame back on Escobedo, reminding him that this all began when he killed the American businessman. Realizing how serious the situation has become, Escobedo arranges a meeting with the cartel leaders to discuss their next move. As Ryan returns home, Kathy goes to pick him up, but something about the situation immediately stands out to her. Both Jacobs and his secretary, Moira, were killed on the very same day. The detail instantly grabs Ryan's attention. The two rush to Moira's home where police are still inspecting the scene. Ryan tells the investigating officer that Kathy may have seen the man responsible, but they are unable to produce a usable sketch since she only saw him once from behind. The officer grows frustrated by the complete lack of leads, but then Ryan notices something. Moira's answering machine is still playing Cortez's recorded message. He immediately takes the recording back to the FBI for further analysis. The voice turns out to match a recent call intercepted from Colombia. Now they finally have several leads on Cortez's background. Ryan orders them to find out his name. Meanwhile, the cartel leaders begin arriving for their scheduled meeting, while Clark and his men observe from a distance. Once they lock onto the target, the aircraft above releases its missile. But Escobedo is running late. The missile detonates just seconds before he arrives. Back at the office, Ryan receives confirmation of Cortez's true identity. He was once a colonel in Cuba's intelligence service before later working for a terrorist group in Puerto Rico. When Ryan asks Jean to bring him in if they locate him, she tells him that it is nearly impossible because the Colombian authorities are unwilling to move against the cartel. Their conversation is interrupted by a news report about the explosion that killed 30 people, including several cartel members and civilians. After hearing that, Jean agrees to search for Cortez if he is still alive. On the other side, Cutter is troubled by the civilian casualties, but Ritter reminds him that the orders were to hit the cartel without concern for the consequences, assuring him that the attack will simply be blamed on a cartel rivalry. Ryan studies the casualty report and quickly determines that Cortez survived. But something else immediately catches his attention. The same report was also forwarded to Ritter. That alone raises his suspicions. He begins comparing the forensic differences between a car bomb and a missile strike and quickly reaches a disturbing conclusion. The explosion could not have been caused by a car bomb. A vehicle blast would have forced the wreckage outward. Instead, the site contains a deep crater, fully consistent with a missile impact. At the same time, Cortez reaches the exact same conclusion. The explosive compound found at the scene is one used exclusively by the military because of its cost. To him, that confirms what he already suspected. American soldiers are operating on Colombian soil. Cortez then sends a fax to Cutter, demanding a meeting in Panama City. If Cutter refuses, he threatens to expose the illegal military operation in Colombia. Meanwhile, Clark's team locates another drug manufacturing facility. But it is far too heavily fortified for a direct assault. With no safe way in, they decide to fall back and wait. Later, the meeting takes place in a hotel room. There, Cortez offers a dangerous deal. He will help the Americans eliminate Escobedo so he can take control of the cartel and deliver major drug busts and high-profile arrests that would serve their political agenda. In return, he demands that they cut off communications with the soldiers and reveal their location so he can cement his authority inside the cartel. Unseen from a distance, Ryan overhears the entire conversation. He takes the evidence straight to Greer, who is deeply disappointed that his own people have come to this. Ryan admits that if he keeps digging, he may uncover even worse things. But Greer reminds him of the oath he swore to the people of the United States and urges him to see it through. Elsewhere, Bennett meets with Cutter, who fears the media may soon begin scrutinizing the bombing. He suggests wrapping up the operation. Bennett gives him a cold response, "Do what's necessary." Ryan asks his colleague PT to hack into Ritter's computer, and PT plants a program to capture his password. But he forgets to warn Ryan that he must wait until Ritter steps away before trying to access it remotely. The moment Ryan locates the reciprocity files, Ritter begins deleting them. Ryan quickly calls him to buy time, but Ritter notices the alert that someone else has logged into his system. He coldly warns Ryan that computer theft is a serious crime, then hangs up and deletes every file tied to the mission. Even so, Ryan manages to print one document directly linking Ritter to Clark. He immediately rushes to confront him, but Ritter turns the pressure straight back on Ryan, reminding him that Ryan personally stood before Congress and guaranteed that no military operation would take place. Ryan pushes back, threatening to expose Cutter's authorization of the mission. Ritter remains completely calm. He reveals that he already has a signed presidential pardon covering everything connected to the operation. Ryan returns home where Kathy tries to comfort him, but even she cannot see a way out of the situation. Then another devastating call comes through. Greer has passed away from his illness. Soon after, everyone, including the president, attends the funeral. Meanwhile, Cutter follows through on his deal with Cortez and hands over the coordinates of the soldiers in Colombia. Cortez immediately orders his men to circle them. Clark tries desperately to reach his team but cannot get through, leaving him deeply worried for their safety. The cartel closes in. As heavy gunfire erupts, Chavez desperately tries to contact Clark and request air support, but the communications are jammed. One by one, the soldiers around him are gunned down. At the same time, Chavez's radio transmissions are intercepted by Jean. She contacts Ryan and asks what she should do. Ryan tells her to send him the recordings immediately. The cartel captures the 2 wounded soldiers. Although Chavez survives, he quickly realizes he is hopelessly outnumbered and retreats deep into the jungle to hide. Clark finally manages to reach Ritter. Ritter reveals that communications were cut because Ryan has uncovered the secret mission, and they cannot risk extracting Clark and his men. Clark is ready to fly out and deal with Ryan personally, but Cutter stops him, informing him that Ryan is already on his way to Bogota. The next morning, as Ryan's plane lands, Clark is already waiting at the airport. At gunpoint, he forces Ryan into a van. A short while later, Clark contacts Ritter and reports that he has dealt with Ryan, telling them to resume the operation. But just as he suspected, Ritter never follows through. Clark then turns to Ryan and asks why he came. Ryan assures him that his only intention is to bring the soldiers home safely. Clark believes him. He tells Ryan to arrange a helicopter, then takes him to meet his pilot, who is passed out drunk from alcohol. They try to rent a helicopter, but the owner initially refuses. That changes the moment Ryan shows him his business card, convincing the man to hand over the aircraft. They fly deep into the dense jungle, with Clark guiding the pilot toward the most likely extraction point. But instead of survivors, they find a dead soldier floating in the water. Clark immediately orders the pilot to land so they can search the area. Following a trail of blood, they finally reach Chavez. The moment he sees Clark, he lunges at him in fury. Furious that they were abandoned without any support, Ryan pulls him back and admits that the blame lies with him. Chavez then tells them that Cortez's men captured 2 of his surviving teammates, while he buried the rest of his men himself. As they debate what to do next, Ryan makes a bold decision. He decides to go directly to Escobedo's house. Ryan is escorted inside to meet Escobedo while Clark and Chavez watch from a distance. Escobedo greets Ryan and demands to know why he has come. Ryan explains that he is there to retrieve his associates who came to buy coffee just like Hardin. When Ryan mentions the $650 million Escobedo lost, Escobedo assumes he is there to return the money. But Ryan denies it. Instead, he hands over the recording of Cortez plotting to kill Escobedo and take over the cartel. Escobedo immediately summons Cortez. As Cortez walks in, one of the guards takes his weapon. That alone alerts his associate, who instantly senses something is wrong. Escobedo introduces Ryan, then confronts Cortez over the betrayal. But just as he is about to kill him, Cortez's associate appears from behind and opens fire, killing Escobedo and the guards. As he turns the gun toward Ryan, Chavez fires through the window and kills him. But while Chavez reloads, both Ryan and Cortez dive for the tape recorder. Chavez fires again, narrowly missing Cortez. Realizing the situation is turning, Cortez chooses to flee, while Ryan grabs the recorder. At that moment, Clark arrives and informs Ryan that the captured soldiers are being held in the basement. The 2 immediately rush to free them, while Cortez rallies the men in the compound, telling them that the Americans have killed Escobedo. Clark contacts the pilot and orders him to hold at the standby position. At the same time, Cortez realizes they must be heading for the prisoners. They quickly neutralize the guards outside and free the wounded soldiers. But as they move to leave the compound, Cortez's men surround them. Ryan then orders Clark to take the wounded soldiers and go. He stays behind to draw Cortez away from them. Clark calls in an extraction at the Lindo coffee factory while laying down cover fire for Ryan as he is being chased. He then pulls back as well, regrouping with Chavez before the 3 of them make their way to the pickup point. Meanwhile, Ryan uses the tape recorder as bait. As Cortez moves in to stop the sound, Ryan ambushes him from behind. The 2 trade heavy blows before Ryan breaks away, leaving Cortez trapped beneath a pile of timber. Ryan fights his way up to the rooftop. But the incoming fire is so intense that the pilot is forced to lift off despite Clark insisting they wait for him. Then Clark spots Ryan on the roof. He quickly shoots the gunman firing at him, giving Ryan just enough time to reach the helicopter and grab on. At that same moment, Cortez makes it to the rooftop and opens fire on the helicopter. But Chavez immediately returns fire and kills him. They safely return to America, where Ryan meets with Bennett. The president pretends to know nothing about the entire operation and asks Ryan to help him cover up the mess. But Ryan sees straight through the act. He tells Bennett that it is his duty to report everything to the Senate Oversight Committee. Bennett urges him to rethink that decision. He even suggests Ryan keep the information as leverage for future benefits. Ryan flatly refuses. Bennett then tries a different angle, appealing to Ryan's respect for Greer's legacy. He warns that Greer's name will also be dragged into the scandal, but Ryan refuses to be manipulated and walks out of the office. Cutter is waiting for him in the corridor and tries to persuade him to reconsider. Ryan refuses to even speak with him. A few days later, Ryan takes his seat before the Senate Oversight Committee and delivers his full testimony on Operation Reciprocity, exposing everyone involved in the illegal mission.